Hello, we're here with Kim Shuck. Hi, Kim. How are you?
I'm okay. How are you doing?
I'm well. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your background, your upbringing, your identity as a Native American woman.
hmm Um, okay. So I live in San Francisco, which is where my mother was born. The family's been in the same house for over 100 years now. And that side of the family is Euro-American. Um, we always say Polish because that's the language, but of course it was Galicia when most of the family moved from there. There was no Poland. Um, So it means that my grandmother's family was technically from Ukraine, and my grandfather's family was actually from Poland, but in the Carpathians, so not the sort of central part. My father's family, my father was brought up in northeastern Oklahoma in Cherokee territory, but at the time, if you told anybody it was a reservation, they would have laughed at you because nobody thought it was. As it turns out, it's been a reservation the whole time. It's just that people stopped calling it that, and it's sort of been reinstated with that as an official word. So um, my grandparents lived in Ottawa County, which is technically outside of Cherokee territory, but at times they lived inside the Quapaw Reservation, which it was at the time. So
So they were Cherokee or?
my grandfather's Cherokee. We have no idea what my grandmother was. She was adopted in a really murky adoption in the early 20th century when a lot of murky adoptions were happening in Oklahoma. So, so we do know what Grandpa was, and I am an enrolled member of the citizen of the Cherokee Nation. And I always knew it. People sort of so many people these days come to find out that they're indigenous later. I've always known it. You know, folks often ask, like, when did you find that out? It's like, I don't remember not knowing it. I'm pretty sure it was part of the stories from earliest childhood. And we used to go back and visit the family, and my great grandmother spoke Cherokee to us. And so, like that. You know, it was always part of it. And everybody in the family told stories. Some of them are traditional stories, some of them are more contemporary stories, but they're definitely Cherokee experience stories from back in Oklahoma, just like my grandfather and grandmother here in California told me immigrant stories. So
So you were born in San Francisco and you were raised here? So you didn't live on the Cherokee
I
Reservation
have
or in
never
Oklahoma?
lived full time back in Oklahoma, but I have spent a significant amount of time back there.
So what's it like on
What's it
the
like?
reservation?
It's kind of snazzy now. I mean, when I was a kid, my grandparents lived off of a gravel road, which is the step up from a dirt road, and that they threw gravel on it. It's mining territory. So the town that my grandparents lived in for most of the time that I was alive was the mining town where on top of mines. Okay, so um, they mined lead, zinc, and cadmium out of those mines, and they so badly undermined the town that by the time I came around, most of downtown had fallen in and had a fence around it. So it was a really small place right on the Oklahoma-Kansas border. We used to go play in the mine tailings, and then we come home, blow our noses, it'd be orange, which is undoubtedly the cadmium. And it supplied the lead, most of the lead for bullets for World War One, and then a lot of the white lead for paint.
But this mine was outside of the reservation. It was not inside the
Yeah,
reservation.
it's definitely not on Cherokee territory. Some of it was in Quapaw territory, I believe. But it's just a ecological disaster. If you look up picture Oklahoma, it's a total ecological disaster.
So, as a child, when you visited your grandparents, would you go into the territory?
And yeah. We go to Tahlequah. We go. Grandpa, my great grandmother and my grandfather both used to go to the Bureau of Indian Affairs Hospital, and yeah, all of that.
Can you, for our global audience, can you explain that relationship a bit more about whether or why Native Americans would live on a reservation or outside a reservation, or what that means? Or
okay, well, there were moments when there was no choice. I mean, you hear a lot now about people who are pretending to be Native, which happens, but what's also true is the definition of Native American has changed depending on what the government was trying to do. So initially, the reservations were there to protect settlers. So people would be there, and they basically there were rules. So, for example,
initially, sorry, just to interrupt. So in the western part of the U.S., initially would mean in the mid 1800s or something.
Yeah. So the largest mass hanging in United States history was a group of, I think it was Lakota, but it was definitely Siouan people who were hanged at the order of President Lincoln, who is generally considered to be a really good guy. But they were hanged because they were hunting to feed the people off agreed upon territory, as far as I know what that story is. So you had to stay there. Okay, so there was a time when reservations were a place you had to stay. And there was a lot of language about how it was supposed to protect people, but it never did protect people. And it still doesn't protect people because of the way the laws work. Basically, it was to get folks out of the way of settlers and to protect settlers from those people. And then, for the Cherokee, what happened is we were forced marched from the east, from Georgia, northern Georgia, Carolina.
So the southeastern part of the U.S.
Yeah, the Cherokee are a southeastern tribe, and we were forced marched to Oklahoma and sort of dropped off there. And Oklahoma was not Oklahoma then; it was considered Indian Territory, and it was kept Indian Territory for quite a long time. And they basically warehoused, when they wanted to move Native people out of their land base and away, they would plop them in Oklahoma, and that happened for a while. And then, probably due to pressures from Texas ranchers who wanted to be able to move their cattle up through Indian Territory without disruption into Kansas, Dodge, which was a railhead, so things would move out from there. They eventually made it into a state, and before that, there were areas that were understood to be occupied by people, but it wasn't reservations. And then it became reservations, and then that sort of established more control over the populations, the Allotment Act, which basically they decided that in spite of the fact that the land base in Oklahoma was significantly smaller than the aggregate of everybody's land that they'd been moved off of, they wanted some of that for settlers as well. Especially if it's going to be a state, you really need to have settlers. So they sectioned off allotments that people would be given, and then the remaining land was sort of handed over to Euro-American settlers.